So yeah, I guess two things. Firstly, who are the artists that really inspired you and first got you interested in music? And secondly, what were your kind of earliest experiences of playing music?
Well, I used to get a lot of records that were that I found in the house that we were renting or something that got left over by the previous tenant, or maybe my cousin left a record there or whatever, you know, so I would hear some records. I remember I played the drums when I was about 7. I just had a snare drum and a cymbal, you know, but there was this Donovan's Greatest Hits record, the one where he's on the front there, you know, kind of with his shirt off, I think. Kind of looks like a surfer boy, you know what I'm talking about? I think it's his, you know, I might say.
Was that his Greatest Hits?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
so,
it,
you know, Mellow Yellow has that prominent hi-hat kind of hook, you know.
Yeah.
So that was an easy thing to play along to. So I remember listening to that track in particular.
So drums was your first instrument?
I think so, yeah. That was the first one that I was interested in. And I mean, I didn't pursue it that long. You know, I didn't get good or anything like that. But, you know, I had a couple of drums and I took a few lessons. But I mean, but I think that might have been the first sort of record I stumbled on to. You know what I mean? I wasn't seeking it, it was there. Here's something I can play along to, you know, so.
I think mine was more emotionally connected. And it was a song, Out on the Weekend by Neil Young.
That is a great tune.
Yeah, and I don't know, my mother always came in the room and goes, you know, she was concerned about my mood because I was always sad, you know, so, and
about
I just,
what?
Just anything. I was sad for just a couple of years, maybe a few years, until I got, till now. What time is it? No, but it's about, you know, loneliness and I think and we listen to it, it's really about depression, and he's going through geographicals, like if I go to California, maybe things will change, you know, but you know, all that stuff, but that was really powerful, and also the instrumentation on the pedal steel on it, just swooping in and out, and yeah, it was good.
And what about the first time you played?
And
what about the first time you played?
The first time I played, I took down my brother's guitar off a wall, and I thought it was just a decoration thing. But then I learned how to tune it, and then and it was made by my brother said it was like made by Radio Shack. It was a classical, and I just started messing around with it. You know, I got the Mel Bay way, you know, Twinkle Twinkle, and then I found bar chords. And then that was it, you know, basically.
Well, I guess my parents were classical pianists and started with piano. But it was my mother's father's old guitar. I've never met him. That was always in the house, but it was missing the top 2 strings. So it was a classical guitar, but it was a very thin classical guitar, so I guess that was my first bass. And I would take it to my room and play it like, you know, 4-string bass. And Paul McCartney, I heard for the first time at a grocery store. I lived in a bubble. We didn't really have any records besides classical, so my first introduction to music was Mozart, Beethoven, Bach. My mother particularly liked Bach, and then I read an article that John Lennon really liked Bach. And I was in the grocery store. I was 9 years old, and I heard All We Need Is Love, and it had this odd time signature, and I didn't know what it was. You know, I just like, why is this so poppy, but it's odd, you know? and I asked my friend's dad, you know, what are we listening to? What is this music? And he looked at me and he just started laughing, like this devilish laugh. He was just like, "But this is the Beatles." Like, are you kidding me? I was like 9. And so I went home and obsessed on this guitar and played all the Paul McCartney parts.
And so you didn't have many records in the house. Did you first start collecting them? Or?
I started, well, my mother, when we came to this country, my parents were kind of obsessed with garage sales. They're like, what is this thing, you know? And so we would stop at garage sales on the weekend, you know. In California, I don't know if they have that in other places. In California, it's kind of a big deal, or LA. And I would always stop at the record section. And I remember seeing my first Abbey Road in the mix and got very excited. It was like 50 cents, you know. I was like, Mom, buy this. So she did. I played that record over and over and over again.
And it's amazing the amount of people who've been, very expected, the amount of people who have been influenced by the Beatles. And David, how about you?
I began drums probably in 2nd grade. The school offered it among like violin and recorder and drums. And it was just a practice pad and sticks. But I had an affinity for it, and I just played it and played it and played it all through elementary school, all middle school, high school, had private teachers, this and that. Loved playing drums. Fun to do. I probably bothered my neighbors, you know, being so loud. But I think that the turning point was, I played all kinds of music from Chicago to Bay City Rollers, just playing anything I could that I was listening to. And it wasn't until, I think, it was Wings. This is an offshoot of the Beatles.
Yeah.
Live and Let Die was on TV. It wasn't Midnight Special. I don't know what it was. But it was some rock concert of them doing it. And I watched it, and I was like, wow. I did like the song as well. But to see the show was like, wow, this is something I'd really like to keep playing drums and be in a band. I think that was the impetus for me to really think about, you know.
That is a great tune. And quite a spectacle, I think, when he does it live. So.
Yeah, it was grand. They had fireworks and everything going, so it looked pretty good.
You guys, you know, you bring things down a lot in the verses and then have these big choruses, and this seems to have influenced so many bands. Is that something that just happened naturally, or?
Yeah, very much so. I remember even before we started to work with producers who do that. You know, they what do? They comb through arrangements, right? They get rid of the extra stuff that you don't need, right? They try to figure out what's the core here of, you know, how do we hear this better? How do we create clarity, you know? But I think that, you know, just naturally we would do that. I remember doing it when we rehearsed. Try an arrangement. That sounds okay, I think, but what do we do now to try to make it better, to achieve more impact or clarity or whatever? And you start to kind of eliminate things. You start, well, why don't Joey and I not play during this section here, and then we'll come in on the next section, or let's, whatever you do, you just start to kind of mute yourselves, you know, and kind of, so we naturally already started to do that. And then, you know, when you work with producers, you know, they have other more subtle ways to do the same thing, you know what I mean? Like, hey, let's, whatever a producer does, you know, let's line up the bass line with the kick drum, let's have less playing here, let's, you know, whatever. They try to kind of neaten you up or whatever, you know, or that, at least that's how some, no, I guess not everybody does it like that, but, so yeah, I mean, I think that.
Because I read something about Kurt Cobain saying, you know, Smells Like Teen Spirit in particular, you know, which obviously is one of the biggest songs of the 90s and of all time in rock, and he credits you guys specifically and those dynamics in coming up with that, and it just
proximity, you know,
yeah.
you know, proximity, you know, Paz is in the grocery store here and all you need is love. Hey, this is so poppy, but there's a what's the 7-beat measure or whatever it is that's in all you need is love. You know, that kind of perks your, you know, draws your ear in or something. You know, and so if we were putting out records shortly before that outfit was putting out their records, it's just, it makes sense that they would hear something. I mean, just like we heard records before, you know, whenever we listen to the Violent Femmes or whatever. Hey, what's this kind of stripped down, folky, punky thing? Maybe we should try a little bit of. Maybe that's a kind of a flavor that we can accomplish or whatever. You know, you hear things that you think not only that you like, but you think, oh, I could do that too. You know what I mean? That's within my ability maybe to emulate something like that. I like this, so I'm going to try to emulate. I mean, it's just proximity, I think, and I think that you know, people, whether it's music journalists or cultural writers or people talking about their generation or whatever, everyone tries to find where the center is and where the right is and where the left is of that, and oh, I see something here. This is very left of center, but really, again, it's proximity in time. It's like, this is where I am, and so this is what I'm hearing. You know what I mean? But it completely. So it completely disregards whatever came before it, right? You know what I mean? So you can't, you know.
Who was in proximity to you that led you to start writing? In the 80s when you first started, because is it?
Well,
true?
Everyone mentioned the Beatles. You know what I mean? I said my first record that I played along to was a Donovan record, but the first records that I would have been motivated to purchase maybe down at the shop when I was probably, you know, around Paz, she just, for her, started to be 9 years old or whatever. You start, okay, I like this. What is this? And you start to pursue it. You know what I mean? And you know, even though they're genius in the sense that they appeal to a lot of people, they appeal to the masses. If you really look at what's there, of course, there's a lot of smarts going on. You know what I mean? That's smart in the sense that it doesn't draw a lot of attention to itself. It's not trying to be smart for the sake of being smart. It's really kind of got something, I don't know, it's got some kind of integrity or something, you know, so, you know, so if you hear Beatles records when you're a kid or Bob Dylan records or whatever, you know, you hear all kinds of, you know, it seems like for someone of my age, you know, whatever examples I had for music, it wasn't like I was coming out of the turn of the century or something and we're like listening to parade music or something and like, well, you know, how about something different? It's kind of like things, you know, the example of music made in the 50s or 60s or whatever, you know, it's got lots of examples of things that are, I don't know, poetically free, shall we say, right? I mean, you know, this is the, you know, the influence of, you know, I mean, really, if you're going to talk about, like, I mean, I think that if you can talk about, like, what makes you want to do something, I mean, probably things like the art movements of the earlier part of the 20th century probably really changed a lot of kind of cultural vocabulary for everybody, whether they knew it or not. You know what I mean? You can talk about, like, whatever, Salvador Dali or something like that, or Picasso, or, you know, any kind of mid-century modern thing. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, that's the stuff that really kind of, like, I think changes everybody, you know, in Western culture. I think. I'm not talking about whatever India, subcontinent of India or something like that, or Africa or whatever. You know, I'm talking about Europe, North America or whatever. It's the European art movements of the, like, I think anyway, like the 1920s and stuff that really kind of like, all right, You're changing all the rules.
Yeah.
I mean,
So Joey, what first drew you to working with Charles? When you guys first met?
It was, man, that was really lucky, you know. You went to university to start a band, right? Was that your thing?
no, I just was like trying to get out of my house.
That's what I wanted to do. One of the goals was to do that, because I came from like this town, and a lot of people I know were just doing cover things. I wasn't interested in that. I heard original stuff from Charles, and I thought it was amazing. But God, I want to do that, and you know, and I just want to break out from the, you know.
How did you first hear it? Did Charles play it to you? Just
Yeah,
play
yeah,
guitar
We
and
were
sang?
like roommates. There was like 7 of us. Like
He always had an
like this,
acoustic,
you know?
and I remember him in the bathroom. He was spitting in the mirror, and he was just going. I don't know what the heck you were doing. You were just being cathartic, and it was so weird. I go like, I like this guy. You know, that's pretty cool. You know, you're just spitting in a mirror, just like
The other roommates
splattering
didn't like
all
so
over.
much.
And I go like,
Charles, you gotta go clean that shit up. What the hell are you doing?
So there were
Like,
7
I
of
wanna-
you guys in an apartment, 7 roommates,
Yeah.
it was a suite.
and are you still in touch with the other 5?
A couple of them. Yeah, like one of them, Dave.
Oh yeah, Dave got it. Yeah.
And were they supportive as your guys, you know, your musical ambitions evolved? Did you ever like rehearse in
I
your
mean, I
apartment?
think
and
they
stuff?
got something out of it. You know what I mean? We were like the odd guys with a couple of guitars that had some weirder records than what they had. They were listening to, what were they? They're always cranking up the, you know, what was the songs they were always playing? They had these Triumph songs they would come out, not the band Triumph.
One guy was dancing to Footloose. That was
Footloose.
funny.
Footloose.
I was like embarrassed, like,
You know.
shit, I'm a neighbor, you know, but it's okay, dude, it's okay, it'll be all right. But yeah, we didn't listen to that. I had one roommate that was in love with someone in high school, and all he listened to was Air Supply, All Out of Love, you know, and then I walked in there, like, Fabi's listening to it again. And then so I put on Iggy Pop, and it's just like, you know, it's like, get over it. And I just put on, you know, TVI, like, it's just Lust for Life, something else. Like, you gotta get over this crap, man. You know, just listen. You know, the song's bringing you down. You know.
Yeah, you've got to have something to pick you back up. And how did you guys meet David? And David, what kind of made you want to become the drummer?
I had put my drums away. I don't think I was playing drums. And then through word of mouth, not through word of mouth, but just a reference, basically. Kim, who was in the band, her husband, I had worked with previously. And they were looking for a drummer, and I just went over to, I think, the apartment. I didn't have any drums or anything, or not with me. And just, yeah. And
You played on the Lynn drum machine.
oh, there was a Lynn, there was a Lynn drum machine, if anything.
The chops were.
Yeah, but yeah, that was it. Just it was a little alien to me at first because I hadn't heard all this kind of this stuff. But yeah, good to love it. And yeah.
One final question for you guys. As this series is called The Greatest of All Time, from Dead or Alive, who would you guys choose for such a accolade? You know, who do you think are the greatest of all time?
Maybe I would break it down to your brain, heart, and another thing. Like what's in your heart, what moves your brain, and what moves you physically. Maybe that's the 3 we should go for.
I think that's
What's that
That's
again?
good.
I mean,
Like what's cerebral to you? What music is it that if you want to like be introspective, that would definitely be nearly. That's the heart too. Yeah, that's a hard one. I would have to put Neil Young up there, definitely. If the 3, Neil Young, obviously the Beatles, and then just the craziness. I really like Donovan actually. You know, I like playing it for people, and they're just amazed at his catalog. You know, and
The Beatles, Donovan,
And Neil Young.
and Neil Young. That's a pretty good three.
It is very good. Difficult to
Well,
think of one.
I have to add, as far as colors go, a little surrealism, where it hasn't, for me, it's really important to listen to records where I'm not boxed in to sometimes like lyrically, you know, or nostalgically, where I don't have too much history with it, but I do because it's still the same record. And one of the women that a woman that has influenced me, this one particular record, her name is Susan Ciani, and she's an analog synth player, and she did this record in New York. It's called 1975. And this record is really awesome because the audience has never heard this kind of instrument before. And every time I listen to this record, I'm in the audience. And I've listened to this record so many times, and I'm always hearing some other, you know, melody and some other thing, and it's, I guess, the you know, it's attracted me throughout time. And it's surreal, and it's saying a lot of things, but yeah, I think she's really awesome. She just popped into my head.
Who's this?
I'm gonna check that.
Her name is Susan Ciani.
Susan Ciani.
Ciani. She's a analog synth player from the 70s, but she still does things today. But that one record is really, really cool.
I'm gonna check that out. That's yeah.
So you got one there. You got.
I
one.
well, I'm just throwing things in the pot because I still.
That's
I mean,
good
I
to-
agree with you know, I agree with Joey and what he said. I was like, oh yeah, that seems good. I'll double that. I guess maybe Velvet Underground has a big influence in lyrically and surrealism, and art, and like Andy Warhol. You know, you have so many things that seem like impossible to do. A poet singing in a rock band, you know, and then art, and then you know, the album covers, the whole package is like, wow. It's you know, we talked about the Beatles. I'm not going to add that, so I'm going to go there. And then Bob Dylan, I'll add him in as far as like him understanding his roots without having them there. You know, like you know, Woody Guthrie was his big influence. So, but he's like Robert Zimmerman, you know, that kind of invented himself because something drew him this direction, and he was able to manifest pretty awesome career out of that. So I'll make those my three.
Got a very good for you, David.
I have three that are. This is kind of funny. Giddy, Alex, and Neil. Rush.
Ah, right. Okay.
They're just in, yeah, as far
That's
as
three.
drums and everything. There you go.
They were always voted best musician on this music magazine. Best drummer.
Musicianship and the
Neil
crazy
Peart.
time signatures and lyrics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Did you?
I think it.
Yeah.
I agree with all.
Yeah, but he needs to add
Charles,
three.
I must apologise. We've jumped the gun there. It's too early.
I'm like, wait, I
Yeah, you know.
How
You're saving the
rude,
best
how
for
rude.
last. Come on.
All right, I'll do Jimi Hendrix, and not necessarily because the guitar playing, which is fine, but just as an attitude and a singer, you know what I mean,
He
and a
really played
songwriter.
it like it was a part of his body. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
So I'll go with.
I like that
I'll
you
go with Jimi Hendrix.
Did it the right way
And,
too. He didn't even.
Oops.
Hendrix. See, I'm moving. Well, for me personally, I suppose Leon Russell,
Mm.
you know, and that's two. I got one more.
One more.
Leon Russell's a good one.
What's that?
Leon Russell's a good one.
Oh, yeah,
Not being
he's-
mentioned.
he's
yeah.
great. And then his eyes
He's
are
amazing.
Cold.
He's like an old soul right at 20. He's just like,
You know who's
Wizard.
really great? You know who's really great? He's a really great singer. Really great produced records. Really well produced records. Produced by one of the former Yardbirds member. The Yardbirds are great, of course. But a guy called Paul Samuel Smith was the producer of all the really great Cat Stevens records. And those are really great records. Really, even though, you know, if you were to criticize Cat Stevens, you could say, for my money, like sometimes it can even get a little precious or something, right? But hey, that's who he is, you know what I mean? And if you're gonna, and there's a lot of music out there that's precious, that just is a load of shit, right? There's a lot of bad, precious music, but I would say he's one of the few people that really gets away with it. It feels authentic, you know, and so I think he's one of the best singers of I mean, I guess he's kind of a 70s, but he's really of the 60s, you know what I mean? I think really, you know, because it's
Sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I apologise for not letting you have your say.
we had a
That's fine.